Okay, so thank you everybody for joining us today and welcome to our Global Employability Expert Series. I am Mirta Aguirre and I'm the head of employability at Virtual Internships, and I am very excited to have you all today. We're going to have a very interesting talk with Jillian Low. Hi Jillian, how are you today?
Good, thank you so much for having me today.
Yeah, it's my pleasure. Jillian is our Chief Academic Officer, and I'm going to read a biography about Jillian. She has a very interesting path, so I think this is really worth exploring. So Jillian, yes, she is the Chief Academic Officer at Virtual Internships, where she leads in the development of partnership support globally. This support includes academic programming, access to credit, and programmatic support, including professional development guidance and coaching. Jillian has worked with over 50 different universities globally to create internship programming, directly supporting over 2,000 students in accessing internship experiences. In creating engaging and meaningful content, Jillian has delivered sessions at the Global Internship Conference, NAFSA, Cooperative Education and Internship Association, and directly at universities supporting professional development, best practices, international internship understanding, and key data and outcomes. In the past, a focus on youth workforce development has allowed her to work in over 6 different countries, delivering programming focused on transitioning to full-time meaningful work post-graduation. So Jillian also holds a Master of Arts from UCL in International Development and Education. So Jillian, I think you're an expert on the subject, and well, I will leave it to you. Let us know what you will be talking about. And for everyone, you can write your questions in the Q&A, and we're going to discuss them after Jillian shares what she has prepared for us today. So thanks, Jillian, for joining us.
Thank you. And so, as you are probably all well aware, today we're going to look at how you are impacting the future of work. And ultimately, what we're going to do is first look at the past. How did we really get to this place? How did we get to remote work and how we're acting just today in 2021? And then look to the future. How will we meet the future of work? What do futurists say, and what will actually happen? And then I'll take that all to the present, to that key question of how you yourselves are impacting the future of work. So the first is, I know Mirta just read out a beautiful long bio of me, but there are 3 key things that really impact my ability to present on this topic. One, me, myself, I am a digital nomad. That means I can work from anywhere in the world. I do have a home base, but I can take my computer, my internet connection, and really be a remote worker anywhere. So I live the life of a remote worker, and I love the life of a remote worker. Prior to being a digital nomad, I was a global nomad. So as Mirta noted, I was really lucky for the past 10 years to work in 5 different countries outside of the United States. So that allowed me to gain work experience in the different workplace cultures, the communication, the processes, and more, and really take that now to my remote work, where I still work across the globe just from behind a computer screen and adapting those different skills. Moreover, I am the Chief Academic Officer at Virtual Internships. So just as the name implies, Virtual Internships, I best be interested in the world of virtual work. And in that sense, I'm really interested in the curriculum that can go behind supporting learners of any age in adapting to remote work and being their best selves, as well as getting a job in remote work post-graduation. And finally, I am just a remote work enthusiast. It's really interesting to see the different changes that have definitely come out in the last 2 years, but even prior to then, how we really got to remote work. And so without much further ado, what I'll do is first start at the drivers of remote work. So if we can think about that first stage of when did we start working remotely, and if I asked you all, when did that happen? it might be kind of a trick question because honestly, we all started working remotely. Way back when, 200 plus years, we were blacksmiths, we were bakers, we were farmers, we were all stationed in our house. And then the Industrial Revolution came about, and all of a sudden we started to urbanize. We started moving from these rural areas to urban centers, getting factories, offices, and more. And we started the daily commute. That all happened 150 years plus ago, and now we're leading to this kind of timeline of how we got from this urban center, these daily commutes, these big offices to remote work. And the first start is it started way back in 1970. So that's when the term telecommuting was actually first coined. And it wasn't coined because of technology. It was actually because of the concept that we could reduce oil use or gas use by not commuting anymore. In the 1970s, we had a huge oil crisis across the globe, and it was getting high prices, and people were trying to figure out how could we reduce that. Another term that was coined in the 1970s due to a Washington Post article was flex working, and that was more looking at could we reduce traffic and congestion in big urban centers by letting everybody stay home. So the big drivers of the 1970s telework, flex work, remote work were in fact environmental. How could we reduce traffic and reduce our leniency on oil and gas in making sure that we could still work? And then in 1980, we had some big drivers that were actually allowing us to be remote workers. In the UK, US, and across the globe, you saw different companies come about and try to implement this in many different ways. The biggest one that you can always see and kind of note is IBM. So IBM started experimenting in the 1980s with remote working. And what they would do is they would actually have installed terminals in their remote workers' homes. So they think of your tiny great laptop, think much larger, going into someone's home so that they could work remotely. It was so successful though that in 30 years, 40% of their staff actually ended up working remotely. So they were the leaders, pioneers of their time in implementing this remote work. Then we have this gradual growth. So in 2010, the US Census reported that hybrid work increased by over 35% over the past decade. In 2018, the number of remote work companies in the US jumped to 26 in 2014 to 170 in 2018. In the UK, where 5% of workers in 2010 were working remotely, it actually increased up to 25% by 2019. And with the 2020, we of course have the global pandemic. And we all know that is one of the big reasons why we are all discussing remote work today, because the global pandemic all pushed us to our homes. Now, I don't always like the idea that the pandemic equaled remote work, because that really isn't the case. And so there are some big drivers that led us to remote work long before COVID wreaked havoc on our lives, and would have continued to drive us to remote work even without that. So the first was those environmental pressures that I talk about. Originally, oil prices, traffic, and environmental concerns were the leader of remote work. You can make a very small footprint if you are not leaving your house and making these commutes, different things happen. The other one was just increased technology. It was a natural change as technology got easier. Wi-Fi access was everywhere. My laptop was much smaller. We were able to really kind of adapt. New tools came out with Slack and Zoom becoming very, very widely used. Co-working spaces, the first seen in 2005 in San Francisco, all of a sudden blew up to having tons across the globe, allowing you to not need an office space, but just a computer and that connection. And so it really allowed us to just naturally go more remote. And finally, generational work habits. So millennials led the change in workforce habits, and they really put a focus on work-life balance and flexibility. Furthermore, they were more likely to have multiple careers, unlike boomers. So where a boomer, those from the 1945 to 1960s, would get a job and likely stay 7 to 50 years, a millennial was more likely to jump their careers 5 to 7 times, hopping every which way. These changes really led companies to adapt, looking more at flexible work opportunities and more. And this was kind of doubled down when Gen Z entered the workforce a few years ago, because they mimicked millennials in really kind of advocating for this flexible work experience and this remote work. Now, of course, remote work in 2021 was greatly affected by the pandemic, so I won't just gloss over that. On the left side of this slide, what it does is it gives us a snapshot of 2020. So October, prior to us having a vaccination, prior to us changing, when we were on an upswing of a second kind of rise across the globe, winter in the Northern Hemisphere was making us very, very cold and driving us inside and increasing numbers. What you found was that in 2019, 20% of eligible workers had been working remote in the US, and that increased to 71% of eligible workers at home in October. But a crucial changing thing was when we reviewed in October, 54% of remote workers wanted to continue from home after COVID. So all of a sudden, when these workers who hated remote work in April 2020 were frustrated by it in May 2020 had really embraced it now in October and now wanted to continue to do so. But because this huge influx of remote workers, we were finally getting the data we needed. And so what we found was these big companies were also learning, one, that remote work didn't impact productivity. A Deloitte study suggests that the perceived productivity capacity is actually not negatively impacted, and that only 1 in 4 of remote workers think their productivity might suffer outside of working hours. 2, they also had increased buy-in. In 2020, Gartner Reimagined HR did a whole survey where 90% of HR leaders indicated that they now completely trust their employees, which was not the case in 2019 or before. So now the argument of, can I work remotely? Should I work remotely? Had a lot less barriers when it came to it. And in 2021, a most recent study, Harvard found that more than 81% of employees either don't want to return to the office at all, or at least with like a hybrid work schedule, up even more from those 54%. In March 2021, the UK had around 51% of eligible workers working remotely. And in fact, mirrored this kind of Harvard study where there's increased demand with wanting to go this hybrid workforce. 20% didn't want to work in an office at all, and only 20% on the flip side wanted to work in an office 100%. So across the globe, you can kind of see similar trends coming out, that we as workers were pushed to go to remote, and then staff was having to adapt. But what we found was the silver lining to remote work and why it was good. But this really did impact internships specifically. So what we found was that in a PwC survey of 669 CEOs, 78% agree that remote collaboration is here to stay. You could argue that other surveys say 100%. Basically, remote work is here. But unfortunately, across the globe, not every job can be done remote. In fact, in one study of the US of an audit of all careers, only 40% of American workers have jobs that can be done completely remotely, right? We can't have a server at a restaurant serve us food remotely. I also can't have a dentist extract my tooth remotely. There are just certain jobs that cannot be done from behind the computer screen. But when it comes to remote work, according to Pew Research, workers' education level is the key determinant of whether they hold jobs that may go remote. In fact, 62% of workers with a bachelor's degree or more have jobs that could be performed remotely, which is 3 times more than those with no post-secondary education, no higher education after that secondary opportunity. And furthermore, what we have is we have a lack of internships. In fact, Indeed.com recently noted that their share of internship postings is down 15% from 2020 and a full 39% from 2019. So for the past, what it means is right now we have this rise of remote work. We have a diminishing opportunity of internships, but we do have the idea that all these new remote workers are going to be those who went through the education system of bachelor's degree. And so anybody sitting here who is currently in university, you are more likely to be a remote worker than anybody else. And you will need the remote work skills and attributes to get you there. So then looking to the future, what we have is a couple trends. One, in remote internships, you will see more professional development courses and support from your university being focused on remote work skills. Two, you'll see remote work experiences at the internship level improve. You know, both in supply as more companies learn to offer remote internships and in the planning and delivery, making it much more normal for a student to complete an remote versus in-person or both. And finally, you'll see it impact the hiring decisions. Employers will begin to seek interns that with remote work experience to align with their hybrid work policy. They don't want to teach someone how to work remote. They want someone to have those tools. Now, outside of remote internships, there is just the general work trends that will happen in the future. And while it is looking to the future, so I am still looking into a future crystal ball, and I could be wrong. I didn't call COVID. I didn't think that was going to happen. But these are two things that are most likely definitely to happen, which is one, remote work is here to stay. And really what will impact this is how employees and employers are reacting and adapting to remote work will be the most important attribute. And two, that there is increased technology and technology will increase, and increasing automation and the changing skills will be a need for all employees to meet. So these are two big high level trends that happen. And when I look at that second trend, a key thing that I do want to kind of look at is there's types of tasks you can do in a job. You can do algorithmic and heuristic. So when you look at an algorithmic task, it is when you follow a set of instructions down a defined path that leads to a single conclusion. Heuristic is a task with no instructions or defined path, one that must be creative or experimented with multiple possibilities to complete the task. Basically, you have one that can be automated and one that cannot. And according to the World Economic Forum, by 2025, the time spent on current tasks that work by humans and machines will be equal, meaning more machine work will be happening in our day-to-day life because more and more algorithmic tasks will be automated by technology. And you can see this with the World Economic Forum noting different changing roles. So on the left, you have increasing demand, data analyst, machine learning specialists, digital marketing, digital transformation, project managers, and more are all increasing, while data entry clerks, administrative, accountants, business services, and more are decreasing. It's algorithmic, switching over to heuristic as more and more technology, AI, computers, and whatnot take over those algorithmic roles. And what that actually does more is it makes a couple things different. One, the World Economic Forum in the Future of Jobs 2020 report noted that there is key skills. So in 2025, analytical thinking, creativity, and flexibility will be among the most sought after skills. Oftentimes students think it's technical. And while those will be really useful, while we are changing from algorithmic to heuristic, creativity, flexibility are going to be some of the most sought after skills because they can't be duplicated by a computer. They can be duplicated by you, the talented staff. But it will also be impacted by one, reskilling. According to the World Economic Forum report, 40% of the workers will require reskilling of 6 months in the next 6 months or less. You're going to need new updates to the technology, the processes, and more. And in fact, 94% of business leaders report that they expect employees to pick up new skills on the job, which is a sharp intake up from 65% of 2018, meaning it's becoming more and more important for internships to happen, for those skills to be had then, and to continue on. What you learn in university will give you a great foundation, but it won't always meet the needs of the workforce that will need to be adapted once you're out of university. And of course, it goes to that automation. The workforce is automating faster than expected and potentially could displace 85 million jobs. That displacement doesn't mean that it wasn't replaced by other jobs. Just think about the world of remote in the last 18 months. New jobs like online facilitator has come out because companies now need a person who actually understands how to facilitate meetings and collaboration for these remote workers. So for automated jobs decreasing, there is usually a shift to demand on other skills or jobs. So high level, what futurists say from this World Economic Forum and more is, one, due to remote work, we will have changing geographies. Amid the pandemic, we're already seeing signs of reverse urbanization. So it means that these big, expensive cities are now, people are moving out of it so that they can enjoy life a little better. You've seen it in the States with the Silicon Valley, which was very expensive, people moving to like Bozeman, Idaho, where they can explore the great outdoors. You can also see it with different countries offering visas for remote workers. Estonia, Denmark, Bermuda, all give you a visa to work for up to a year if you can prove your technical skills. And because they would like these remote workers, they're supporting the economy, but working from afar. All candidates will also now get a new talent pool. So a remote work will also help companies look at their available talent pool. It now is less from where they are in that city and can they drive into the office, and more, you can really pick anybody in the face of the planet as long as they have Wi-Fi and your computer. And so by decoupling work from a single location, organizations can better insulate from regional challenges. So if there's weather, civil unrest, natural disasters, or anything else, they will now lean on their other staff globally. What this means for you as an individual is you are going against a different talent pool. It's not just regional now, it is global based on those key interests, but it means that you also can go after global roles and not just regional. Other things that futurists say is that there will be more digital nomads. I started this presentation saying I myself was a digital nomad, being able to work from anywhere my computer and Wi-Fi was. And prior to 2020 and 2019, this was a leading trend amongst Gen Zers. You could take in a simple extended vacation where you work 3 weeks and take a week off from a new location, or it could be year round where you kind of bebop all over the place working. And this is really seeing an uptick with the COVID rates diminishing in some areas and vaccinations increasing, and could take off really in 2022 and beyond. Another trend that could very much happen, which will very much happen, is global legislation. So as the global workforce changes to remote and increases the ability to work from anywhere, or for a company to hire from anywhere, we're going to need more guidance around remote work laws, visa requirements, fair pay, and health and safety. And this will all emerge from different leading countries and countries looking to entice remote workers into their country. And this will be a big challenge that will be faced in the next 10 to 20 years by all companies globally. And finally, what futurists say is, one, more hires will be done online. So during the pandemic, more and more employers got comfortable with the fact that I could hire you sight unseen. Yes, I might have seen you in a camera. I might have digitally vetted you, but I would never have physically shook your hand. And because of that, it is making us all in candidates having to navigate the virtual application process, becoming more and more confident in that virtual application process of assessments, interviews, applications, and to stand out in there. And finally, of course, we have this need of lifelong learners. The World Economic Forum talked about these reskillings in the next 6 months and 5 years, and learning on the job. As technology adapts, evolves, and improves, it will be crucial for every employee to constantly upskill. Just always think about the iPhone, right? You come out with an iPhone 1, you buy it, it costs a lot of money, it took a lot of time to get you there. And then within 3 to 4 years, you have a new one. And now you're like, well, I'm just gonna still hang on to my first one, see if that works. And at some point, you're just completely out to date and you now need to get to that iPhone 3, 4, or 5. Well, that's the same thing as skills. You leave university with these a very expensive set of skills, and then it's going to work until it doesn't, until you become outdated and you need to get to that level 3, 4, or 5. And that's that constant upskilling, getting the new skills to build on that foundational use to kind of adapt to the job. And this is what's going to really impact the future of work. Now, all this being said, what does this have to do with you? So how are you impacting the future of work? And I do apologize. The next slide is going to be like, well, duh, Jillian, but you are interning remotely. As simple as that. You are impacting the future of work just by being present in remote work today. As we know, because remote work is here to stay, because technology is going to consistently impact this, you yourselves, just by embracing this change in the present day, are impacting remote work. Moreover, remote work is impacting your development. So you are now getting an increased understanding of technology. You all, as Gen Zers, were born with technology in the palm of your hand. You didn't adapt to it like previous generations, you know it. But what you have a lot is the social constructs of technology that you haven't yet applied to the professional world. And by working remotely, you're taking all this amazing foundational skills and understanding of collaborative apps and systems and software, and now pushing it to a professional setting and a professional understanding of how businesses use technology. Moreover, you're getting confidence behind the screen. Each and every Zoom meeting you sit in on, or chat or Slack chat you use, or email that you go back and forth frustrated about and figure out at the end, you are getting more confident, which means you will be more confident working remotely in the future, and it will impact your ability to apply to jobs remotely. As I noted before, futurists believe that online applications will become really the tell-all of hiring. And as you become more confident, it will increase your job outcomes. And finally, you're going to embrace work from home flexibility. So whether you are in pajamas right now, whether you woke up at 9 and you started your day at 9:01, or you are working asynchronously across multiple hours and time zones, you are experiencing the benefits of remote work yourself. And you're probably leaning into it. Maybe you're frustrated by a couple of things you're missing from going to the office, but you're probably also happy about a couple of things you're getting from that remote work experience, which is allowing you to see the benefits of both sides of the coin. For us, we review all of our virtual internship participant outcomes, around 2,000 have gone through the program. And what we have found is that 90% of our participants agree that completing a virtual internship increased their ability to work. So it goes back to that you are increasing your work ability from a at-home or telework position. Moreover, professional pathways, 28% of our participants extended their opportunity to an elongated internship, contract job, or a full-time job. These are all remote, meaning these 28% of participants are leaning more into remote work and continuing it past their internship. And the interesting one for me is that 67% of participants agree that completing a virtual internship increased their interest to work remotely in the future. This isn't a surprise. You could see it in 2020 when so many people believed that they would never work remote. And then in 2021, when companies said, hey, do you want to come back to the office? And there was a resounding cry of no that came out. In fact, there's a recent article that just noted that there could be a great resignation, meaning that more and more staff across the globe were frustrated and tired and overworked in 2018 and 2019. And the pandemic just exacerbated that. But what it also did was show them the opportunities that exist from not within the office. And so this interest is really kind of leaning into it. And so how you are impacting the future of work right now is, one, your exposure to remote work may lead to an increased demand for flexibility. And this is seen in current employee trends. So while I say may, it most likely absolutely will. You will want the more flexibility and this want of hybrid or remote work in the future. Furthermore, employees will need to lean into remote internships to meet their diverse candidate pool. Like I said, by being remote, you're opening up to a global workforce, but now employees will need more and more to build that talent pipeline and will need to build internship programs that reflect that, which means more online internships. Furthermore, showing demand for remote work at the internship level naturally increases supply. So by you presently saying, I want a remote internship, you are naturally saying to companies, you need to give us more remote internships to meet this global demand of staff. And finally, it is requiring companies to rethink how they engage all of their remote workers. And that includes interns. This is the biggest challenge companies are having in 2021 and beyond. In 2020, it was how do you react to a pandemic? In 2021, it's how do you engage remote, hybrid, and in-person workers all together? And now how do you also engage them at the internship and in-person level? So that is kind of my present, future, and past in a nutshell. I would love any and all questions about how remote work is impacting how we got here, how we will get to the future, and how you yourselves as interns are making this change. I know that you can ask in the Q&A, so do let me know. And I know we are short on time, so I do apologize.
Thank you, Jillian. Super interesting. I have lots of ideas that go through my mind, but we do have one question from our audience. And someone asks, are virtual internships just as valuable for a job and treated equally as internships which are face-to-face? That is like very repeated question, right?
Yes, no, and that is a great question. So first, in a lot of spheres, you're seeing a lot of different data. So first of all, let me just say, an internship, not looking at if it's remote or in person, is one of the, if not the most valuable thing you can carry to get a job post-graduation. In fact, there is multiple research that shows when comparing two candidates of otherwise equal values, a internship is the highest weighted deciding factor. This goes way up and above GPA, the university you attended, and your major. So an internship is going to be the thing that makes you stand out on your CV or resume when you're applying to a company. Now, the reason an internship is so important to these companies is because it's real world work experience. So not only will you have displayed your technical skills that you gained through university, you're also displaying an understanding of workplace culture, ambiguity of work, which is really crucial, and soft skills, which as other research has shown is what employers crave most from university graduates. They're saying, hey, you're missing out on these key soft skills. So when it comes to, is a remote internship just as valuable as in person? It absolutely is. As long as it is a real world work experience, employers are looking at them and seeing the same. And as long as it's clearly articulated on your resume and CV, really nice bullet points, and you can articulate that in your interview, then yes, it is equal. Now, in fact, it can be better in some cases. So we had a few students last year who applied to jobs and they ultimately got it because their company had gone hybrid, and they ultimately wanted students who had had experience working remotely and didn't need to be trained in this really chaotic year of 2020. When I say that they are equal, though, I would note that there are different types of internships because there is no guidance at a federal level, at a government level, at an educational level that tells you exactly what an internship is. It means that there are some places where you do a course that is deemed as an internship, but it's not real world work experience. You're getting real world data from the course, but you're not actually engaging in that day-to-day work. And that wouldn't be seen as the same as a real world internship. Same thing with a micro internship, 1 to 2 days, or a project. There is no research just yet on how employers vet that versus what they conceive as a real internship that is usually longer in duration and working one-on-one with the host company. So that data isn't fully there yet, but the quality of a virtual versus a in-person internship with set hours and real work is very much there, and companies are vetting them on the same level.
That is super interesting. And we have a comment that says, wow, this is totally awesome and helps me to understand my role as a virtual intern much better. So we are all getting very enlightened here. We also have another interesting question. It says, are remote employees paid the same as physical workers, or what will determine pay?
Such a good question. And so it goes back to my point, the futurist, that they're trying to figure out global legislation. So anybody knows that across the globe, usually what you are paid is based on a couple factors. One of them is the cost of living. So even in fact, you have a minimum wage in the UK, but if you live in London, you have actually kind of an increased wage for the London living wage, right? And in the United States, you have different cost of living, which impacts the minimum wage state by state and whatnot. Now, Facebook is an interesting case. Basically, Facebook sent everybody home in April of 2020 because of a global pandemic. We all know this. And then they came out and said, you know what, this is really exciting. I really love it. And I'm going to have more and more of our staff work remotely. And I might even let every last one of my staff work remotely. Even though Facebook has spent a lot of money building work campuses to have their staff there, they're now okay with it. Mark Zuckerberg even said, hey, I'm going remote. Now that meant a question. Before, they were paying all of these engineers, all of these technologists, this salary that was quite high because they had put all of these engineers and all of these technicians and all of these computer programmers into Silicon Valley, which had a very high cost of living. Now, if I take that really high salary and I move down to Antigua, Guatemala, my salary is now worth 30 times more just because of the cost of living. So Facebook came out and was like, well, we might do cost of living and we might give reductions or increases of cost of living. And the employees got really mad. So they across the board had to say, no, we are going to maintain salary for all staff based off of the skill level and not the cost of living. Not all companies are able to say that at this point because there is this question of should a staff in Denver, Colorado be the same, paid as the same as Paris, as New Delhi, as Ho Chi Minh City, because the pay goes a lot further in different places. Or should pay never have been attached to cost of living? Should have always been attached to the skills demand, the skills that you have and whatnot. This will be a big battle in the next 10 years as companies adapt. Now, when you look at it and I say you as an employee are based in Chicago, Illinois, and I have a remote staff in Chicago, Illinois, right there should be no different of pay just because you're remote or in person, because it's based on cost of living is how most companies have worked it out. But it's going to be really, really interesting how it comes about in the future. It's something that you'll want to maintain. And when you are applying to different jobs, you can ask about remote work stipends, cost of living, and how this impacts on different levels. More and more though, companies are trying to look at pay grade and actually looking at setting pay levels based on skill and less on this cost of living.
Yes, we could discuss a lot of on that topic because it's super interesting. We do have more questions, very interesting questions. This one also, I think that we all reflected on this. How flexible would you say remote virtual internships are in terms of when balancing with other commitments or compared to a traditional internship, right? We know, like we said, okay, we work from home. Do we work more? Do we work less? How flexible is that?
Absolutely. And that's a great question. So first, you have to look at, there is a changing nature of just work, whether it's in person or remote, which is putting more of that focus on what you do and not when you do it. So there are other futurists that believe that the 5-day 9-to-5 work week is no longer existent, that there could be elongated weekends, or it could be really allowing staff to work whenever they need, aside from those collaborative moments. This can be seen in some companies who have really adopted the unlimited PTO, so you can unlimited vacation days or paid time off days. And that concept is really, if you're doing your work and you want to go on holiday, go for it, as long as you continue getting your work done. Now, on the flip side to all of these changes where futurists are saying, yep, it's more about what you do, not when you do it, there is this outcry of employees, both in person and remote, saying, hey, my social life, my well-being, my work-life balance is being encroached upon because there is no 9-to-5. And past 5, I am still getting contacted by my employer. I am still getting emails and I'm still connected. And it's hard for me to remove myself when my living room is my office, is my bedroom. And so this is kind of changing the ways of how we look at it. Now, noting both of those, remote work absolutely is the most flexible because you don't have a commute. You are able to do things, you're able to adapt and whatnot. Now, Is it more flexible than in-person work? That could depend on your time zone, the management style you are working with, and the work that you're ultimately doing. So this can be some big challenges that you have, but that is why a lot of staff are not asking for full work, remote work. Only about 25% to 30% of the working population is saying, hey, I never want to go back into an office again. About 70% are saying, I want to go remote. And usually that average of remote is 2 to 3 days. And that reason is wanting to make it more flexible. If I am 2 to 3 days remote, can I do my laundry while I go into a meeting, right? Can I make sure I can pick up my kid, leave work early and come back and do work later? And making sure that happens is going to be that great opportunity that remote work can offer. It's just kind of trying to meet that where does work end and life begin balance with that really other great opportunity of, is it really matter that I'm in work 40 hours a week if I do all my work, kind of balance.
Yes. Okay. So let's take one last question, if that's okay. I think this is something that we all ask ourselves is, what are some of the challenges encountered by remote workers? You've explained a little bit, but can you say also, yeah, challenges and also the bright side, right?
Yes, right. So there's some really good bright sides. Microsoft interviewed around 9,900 global employees in January, and 67% said, hey, I bring my best self to work when I am from home. Some of the great opportunities there, right, is you can wear your pajamas, you have no commute, you have this flexibility, and you have this ability for caretakers to work a little more flexible and whatnot. Now, the challenges are, one, is you are doing different ways of communicating. And sometimes that natural communication that could happen in person in the office and that ability to understand is lost remotely. The biggest thing that they say in a lot of the remote internship studies, as well as remote studies, is it's that networking and collaboration. Things that aren't diminished by remote work is the mentee collaboration. So my supervisor and me connection is usually just as strong or stronger remotely, but that actual network of a broader sense, you're not having that water cooler culture. So these are some of the challenges. Now, in the hybrid world, that is one of the biggest challenges. Like I say, companies are going through a huge organizational shift right now. And the reason being is if you have a bunch of staff in office full-time and you have a bunch of staff remote full-time, you have a bunch of haves and have-nots, or haves and have-nots. So how do you manage that? And how do you keep a person who's in office collaborating with the people around them and the people online? How do you build celebrations that can be felt, not just because you had a birthday cake in the office, but because you included them on Zoom? And that is going to be the whole world of change that comes about in organizational management and structures of companies as they balance what does hybrid work mean and why are we doing it?
Definitely. Well, I think we could continue like with so many questions, but we have already extended ourselves a little bit. Thank you so much, everyone, for being here. I think this is a fascinating topic. As everyone knows, we work, at least I believe, big part of what we do is remote, right? Jillian, we are both in two different countries, and I can assure, for me, it's a wonderful experience. I do work better in my pajamas. Don't say to my boss, Jillian, maybe you're my boss. Well, it doesn't matter. So I truly believe there are so many room for reflection and ourselves, right, as remote workers or as remote interns, to keep on reflecting, right, what the future is going to look like and what we're going to build the future like, because we're, as you said, we're building also the future of work. So I think this is a super interesting topic. We're going to share this recording so everyone can see it later on. And anything you'd like to add before we leave, Jillian?
No, just thank you so much for your time and energy. We will show the recording, and I've embedded any links that I said the data from. The one key one I did is the World Economic Forum Global Job Outlook. So please look into that if you're any bit interested in this. And thank you again. And you can add me on LinkedIn if you'd like. So sorry about the sirens. I hope you have a wonderful day, and thank you so much for connecting today.
Thank you, everyone. Have a wonderful day.